Welcome to Chautauqua. Chautauqua is a living history program where scholars and actors perform in full costume as famous people in history. Chautauqua began in 1874 as a training course for Sunday school teachers at Lake Chautauqua, New York. Over time, Chautauqua became a humanities program. Its goal then and now is to bring information and entertainment to communities across the nation. It's fun to sit in the audience and see characters like Clara Barton, Benjamin Banneker, Thomas Paine, Paul Robeson, Leonardo da Vinci, and Theodore Roosevelt in front of a live audience performing. I'm Angela Rice Beamer at the Germantown campus of Montgomery College, and this year's theme is Masters of Their Craft. Tonight's Chautauqua character was a master of her craft. She began writing when she was 7 years old and later became the first African American to win the Pulitzer Prize. Tonight's Chautauqua character is poet Gwendolyn Brooks.
Good evening. Good evening. It's wonderful to be here with you. And such a wonderful introduction. I don't know if I can really live up to that, but I'm going to try. I have enjoyed my time so far in Maryland. I was up last night in the northwestern part of the state. It's beautiful up there. I didn't know Maryland was so beautiful, but it is. I just want to thank you for inviting me here this evening, and it's a wonderful thing that we can come together and to share our thoughts and our feelings about life and the various things that we do. I travel throughout the country and I see how vast and diverse this country is, and I just marvel at how beautiful it is. If you don't get a chance to travel, if you haven't, you should try it. It's a marvelous country that we live in, and I thank you for inviting me here. First of all, I want to bring you greetings from the Windy City, Chicago. You know, that's my home. I've lived there all my life, and I expect to live there into eternity. It's the place that I've received much of my inspiration for the poems and the stories and the people I have drawn and painted their lives, and I plan to, and I hope to be there for the rest of my life. Those of you who perhaps haven't really read any of my works, I am a poet. I really don't talk very often. I'm very uncomfortable just talking and giving interviews, but I love to read poetry, and I hope that you do too. My mother said that if she had known that I was going to be a famous poet, she would have made sure that I was born in Chicago. I was actually born in Topeka, Kansas, but they tell me after 5 weeks, my parents returned to Chicago, and I've been there ever since. My mother, Keziah Corrine Wims, was the first person to really encourage me. She said that I began writing poems or putting rhymes together when I was 7 years of age. I've been writing ever since. And my father, David Anderson Brooks, was a man who revered books and education, and both of them, my mother, who was a teacher in Topeka, Kansas, a 5th grade teacher, she also encouraged us and really impressed upon me and my brother Raymond that education is extremely important. Not just in the school, but at home, they encouraged us. I can't even remember how old I was when my mother first gave us and made sure that we had a library card. It was very important to them. I remember reading. I loved to read as a very small child. And I began, as I said, early, putting poems together. I don't remember what grade it was, but I was young, maybe somewhere in elementary school. that I was given the assignment to write a composition, and I put a little extra flair into my composition. I don't know whether it was a history class or English class, but I recall this because the teacher called me up front after I had turned in my paper, and she said to me, who helped you with this? Where did you get this from? Did you steal it? And I said, no, I wrote this myself. And I remember that my mother came to the school and she talked with that teacher. And she said to her, she wrote it. She writes better than you do. Now, I could not believe that she actually would do that because she was such a tiny, gentle, sweet woman. But she did. As I said, was just impressed with their learning, and I was encouraged from the very beginning. My mother told me, and she told everyone else who would listen, that I was going to be the Lady Paul Laurence Dunbar, and I believed her. And so throughout my life, I've just been reading, and some perhaps would say I'm a peculiar child, but I spent most of my time alone. I remember one time my mother, there was a siren or something going off on the street as if there was a fire. And my mother came into my room and she said, Gwen, I think you need to come out because we don't know what's going on. And I just said to her, no, I'm writing. I'm writing, Mom. It's not a fire in here. And I went on writing. My first my first poem that was published in a national magazine was when I was 13. And when I was between 16 and 17, many of my early poems were published in the Chicago Defender, a weekly black newspaper. You know, I have many old news booklets, packages, poems that I have put together in a little notebook. I've filled many of those, but I don't really share those poems anymore with anyone. Maybe a family member on a particular occasion, but that's only when perhaps they want to get a little laugh, because I don't share those. But tonight, I do want to share with you my works. I'm going to start with a couple of the first poems from my first collection of poems. It's titled A Street in Bronzeville. And that collection was published in 1945. This poem, the first one that I'm going to share with you, is called When You Have Forgotten Sunday, the Love Story. But before I tell you that, before I read it, I think I should tell you something about that experience that actually was the result of this poem. When I was 21 and my husband-to-be was 21, I was a member of the NAACP Youth Council. And a mutual friend of ours told him, my husband, that he should come to one of our meetings because he was also a poet, and that he should come and meet this young girl who was also a poet. So, being a fellow who was very interested in that, he came to the YMCA, and he stood there framed in the doorway, looking all elegant with his hands behind his back, looking handsome, he thought, and I thought. I was sitting there with my girlfriend, Margaret Goss Burroughs. She was the director of the Museum of African American History in Chicago, and she was also a famous painter. And I said to her, Margaret, there is the man I'm going to marry. And she yelled out, hey, fella, this girl here wants to meet you. And so that's how I met my husband. And a month and a week later, we were engaged. And a year and a month and a week later, we were wed. So when I look out and I see some of you young girls out here, I question you and I ask, so what does this really mean for you? Those of you who have perhaps a similar desire, begin to write poetry. This is When You Have Forgotten Sunday, the love story. And when you have forgotten the bright bedclothes on a Wednesday and a Saturday, and most especially when you have forgotten Sunday, when you have forgotten Sunday halves in bed, or me sitting on the front room radiator in the limping afternoon, looking off down the long street to nowhere, hugged by my plain old wrapper of no expectation and nothing I have to do, and I'm happy. Why? And if Monday never had to come, when you have forgotten that, I say, and how you swore if somebody beeped the bell, and how my heart played hopscotch if the telephone rang, and how we finally went into Sunday dinner. That is to say, went across the front room floor to the ink-spotted table in the southwest corner to Sunday dinner, which was always chicken and noodles, or chicken and rice, and salad, and rye bread, and tea, and chocolate chip cookies. I say, when you have forgotten that, when you have forgotten my little presentiment that the war would be over before they got to you, and how we finally undressed and whipped out the light and flowed into bed and lay loose-limbed for a moment in the weekend bright bedclothes, then gently folded into each other. When you have, I say, forgotten all that, then you may tell, then I may believe you have forgotten me well. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, everybody loves love. But we know that love is not always simple and blissful. Often it is painful, and it is perhaps filled with guilt. The next poem in this collection that I want to share with you is titled The Mother. Now, this woman who I'm writing about is not your crowned and praised and customary mother, but she's not unfamiliar to us. Her decision is not nice, it's not simple, and it's full of emotional consequences that neither nice nor simple will be the answer. This is the mother. Abortions will not let you forget. You remember the children you got that you did not get. The damp, small pulps with a little or with no hair. The singers and workers that never handled the air. You will never neglect or beat them, or silence or buy with a sweet. You will never wind up the sucking thumb or scuttle off ghosts that come. You will never leave them controlling your luscious sigh. Return for a snack of them with gobbling mother eye. I've heard in the voices of the wind, the voices of my dim, killed children. I have contracted. I have eased my dimmed ears at the breasts they could never suck. I have said, sweets, if I sinned, if I seized your luck and your lives from your unfit finished reach, if I stole your births and your names and your straight baby tears and your gains, your stilted or lovely loves, your tumults, your marriages, aches, and your deaths. If I poison the beginnings of your breaths, believe me that even in my deliberateness, I was not deliberate. Though why should I whine? Whine that the crime was other than mine? Since anyhow you are dead. Or rather, or instead, you were never made. But that too, I'm afraid, is faulty. What shall I say? How is the truth to be said? You were born. You had body. You died. It's just that you never giggled or planned or cried. Believe me, I loved you. Believe me, I loved you all. Believe me, I knew you, though faintly, and I loved you. I loved you all. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, those two poems from A Street in Bronzeville really was a good collection of poems, one of my favorite. And it attracted a lot of attention, and it sold well. Then in 1949, my publishers, Harper's, published my second book, Annie Allen. They didn't have much hope for this poem, for this group of poems. They were surprised, however, just as I was, when I got the Pulitzer Prize for it in 1950. I was 32 years old, and I was the first black to receive that. I was surprised. I was totally surprised. In fact, I remember it well. I was living at 9134 Wentworth Avenue, and the lights were out. Now, I know that maybe you've heard the story, and maybe you haven't, but I want to tell you, it was a time when poets didn't make a lot of money. And the day that Jack Starr, a reporter from the Chicago Sun-Times, called me up and he said, "Do you know you won the Pulitzer Prize?" And I said, no, I really? I couldn't believe it. And I screamed and I said to my son, let's go out to the movies, rather than sitting here in the dark. Well, Jack told me that other reporters were going to come the next day. And we went to the movies, but I have to say that I don't even remember what movie I saw. I just continued to say, did he really tell me this? I won the Pulitzer? Well, the next day, it was exciting and a little appalling, too. Newspaper reporters and photographers came, and everything was fine until it got darker and darker and darker. And I sat there just in shock, thinking, what will they do when they try to plug in the equipment to get the picture and nothing happens? I don't know if I sometimes think, why do we do such dumb things? I just sat there waiting, like, okay, maybe something. And so it was twilight. And when the reporter and the photographer came in and they said, okay, let's plug in the equipment, I just sat there. And believe it or not, the lights came on. I don't know what happened. To this very day, I don't know what happened. My husband said that he had paid something on it, but he didn't think that they would have turned the lights on that fast. But maybe we can just call it light in darkness. The lights came on. Well, Annie Allen is the title of that collection. And it was a collection that I worked on. I worked and worked on that. I wanted everything to be perfect, every line. I really work on everything that I do. I say sometimes that writing poetry is a delicious agony. But I love it. The story is about a black girl growing up during hard times and dealing with the realities of life. Like I said, I wanted every line to be perfect, but it's not. And in fact, many people say that that last part of that big collection of poems, it's called The Womanhood, is really the best part. Langston said it was. So I think maybe he probably was right. It's full of many sonnets. I've written thousands of sonnets, but let me say to you, I've said it to other audiences, I'll say it to you, I don't think I'll ever write another sonnet. I don't think this is a sonnet kind of time that we live in. I think it's really a raw, rich, real time when we really want maybe more of free verse. Actually, I've been thinking about writing a rap song, a poem in poetic rap. I don't know, maybe I'm not in that generation. But I'm going to share with you just one sonnet from Annie Allen. It's a part of The Womanhood. And this is called The Children of the Poor. People who have no children can be hard. Attain a male of ice and insolence, need not pause in the fire, and in no sense hesitate in the hurricane to guard. And when wide world is bitten and bewarred, they perish purely, waving their spirits hence without a trace of grace or of offense, to laugh or fail, diffident, wonder-starred, while through a throttling dark we others hear the little lifting helplessness, the queer whimper whine, whose unridiculous lost softness softly makes a trap for us and makes a sugar of the malocclusions, the inconditions of love. Love, love, like I say, we all love to talk about it. Well, that's how I won the Pulitzer Prize in 1950 for Annie Allen. But perhaps most of you, if anyone has heard anything about me or read anything, I'm sure you've read We Real Cool. It's a poem that I wrote. It's from the Bean Eaters in 1960. And it's a poem, as I said, where most people associate my name with this poem. It's been published in a lot of anthologies and school textbooks. But it's also been banned in different locations. They say it was banned due to the word jazz, thinking of it as being a sexual reference. Well, let me say right now, that was not my intention. I was just thinking about music. Though I must say, I have no objection if it helps anybody. You can think of it that way. But no, this is a poem that was motivated by my walking down the street, my street in the south side of Chicago during the day, and I saw these young men there in a pool hall during the day when I was thinking, now, why aren't they in school? And then I thought, well, what's going on with them? What did I think was happening in their lives, in their thoughts? And so I wrote this poem. And believe it or not, it's a very short poem, but it took me a year to finish this poem. The title is We Real Cool. And underneath that, I say the pool players, 7 at the Golden Shovel. We real cool, we. Left school, we. Lurk late, we. Strike straight, we. Sing, sin, we. Thin gin, we. Jazz June, we. Die soon. Very short. Thank you. Thank you. As I said, the 1960s was an exciting time. It was a real turning point for me in 1967 when I went to the second Black Writers Conference at Fisk University. I had been on tour and I was tired and I wanted to get home and I just thought I would just whiz through Fisk, give my little reading and come on back home to Chicago. But it was there that I found what has stimulated my life these last years. Young people, full of new spirit. They seem stronger and taller, really ready to take on the challenge. These young poets seem to have a different idea about what they should be doing, poetry-wise. And they had a motto, an essential motto. Black poetry is poetry written by blacks, about blacks, to blacks. They were chiefly interested in reaching a black audience. They taught me a lot. They taught me a lot of what I needed to know about this great world that we live in. You know, I was like little Alice in Wonderland. You know, I really didn't know what was going on. But they opened my eyes to a whole new way of thinking. And this theme poem was actually one that was written by Haki. He was Don Ali at the time. His name is now Haki Madhubuti. New integrationist, that's his poem. And he said, I seek integration of Negroes with black people. So we began to recognize the need for people to be connected, united, all people, but especially black people. We knew that being united, that we are each other's harvest. We are each other's business. We are each other's magnitude and bond. So, in 1980, I wrote this poem, Primer for Blacks. Blackness is a title, is a preoccupation, is a commitment blacks are to comprehend, and in which we, you, are to precede your glory. The conscious shout of all that is white is, it's great to be white. The conscious shout of the slack in black is, it's great to be white. Thus, all that is white has white strength, and yours. The word black has geographic power, pulls everybody in. Blacks here, blacks there, blacks wherever they may be. And remember, you blacks, what they told you. Remember your education. One drop maketh a brand new black. Oh, mighty drop. And because they have given us kindly so many more of our people, blackness stretches over the land. Blackness, the black of it, the rust red of it, the tan and yellow tan of it, the deep brown, middle brown, high brown of it, the olive and ochre of it. Blackness marches on. The huge, the pungent object of our prime outride is to comprehend, to salute, and to love the fact that we are black. which is our ultimate reality, which is the lone ground from which our meaningful metamorphosis, from which our prosperous staccato group or individual can rise. Self-shriveled blacks begin with gaunt and marvelous concession. You are our costume and our fundamental bone. All of you, you colored ones, you Negro ones, those of you who proudly cry, I'm half Indian. Those of you who proudly shriek, I've got the blood of George Washington in my veins. All of you, you proper blacks, you half blacks, you wish I weren't blacks, niggeros and niggerines, you. Thank you, thank you. So, as we were embracing who we were and who we are, I came to the point of realizing that we needed to celebrate ourselves. This next poem, I have to admit, I have irritated a lot of my sisters with this poem, but I'm going to share it with you tonight. The title is To Those of My Sisters Who Kept Their Naturals. And underneath that I say, never to look a hot comb in the teeth. Sisters, I love you because you love you, because you are erect, because you are also bent, in season, stern, kind, crisp, soft, in season. And you withhold, and you extend, and you step out, and you go back, and you extend again. Your eyes, loud, soft, with crying and with smiles, are older than 1,000,000 years, and they are young. You reach in season, you subside in season, and all below the rich, rough, right time of your hair. You have not bought blondine. You have not held the hot comb recently. You never worshiped Marilyn Monroe. You say Farrah's hair is hers. You have not wanted to be white, nor have you testified to adoration of that state with the advertisement of imitation, never successful because the hot comb is laughing too. But oh, the rough, dark, other music, the real, the right, the natural respect of self and seal. Sisters, your hair is celebration in the world. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I read that, like I said, I've irritated a lot of my sisters, and I know they still say, some of them, why don't she just leave our hair alone? Well, finally, this is the last one that I'm going to read. I want to introduce you to one of my favorite little boys. His name is Lincoln West. I think he's a darling little boy. But most of those who view him do not think so. He has a dark, dark complexion with African features. And we know that here in the West, we don't consider those to be beautiful. And he hasn't had a very happy childhood. However, as poet, I can promise you a light at the end of the tunnel. This is the life of Lincoln West. Ugliest little boy that everyone ever saw. That is what everyone said. Even to his mother, it was apparent when the blue apron nurse came into the northeast end of the maternity ward, bringing his shrills and plump bottom, looped up in a scant receiving blanket, bending to pass the bundle carefully into the waiting mother hands, that this was no cute little ugliness, no sly baby waywardness that was going to inch away as with baby fat, baby curl, and baby spot rash. The pendulous lip, the branching ears, the eyes so wide and wild, the vague, unvibrant brown of the skin, and most disturbing, the great head. These components of that look bespoke the sure fiber, the deep grain. His father could not bear the sight of him. His mother high-piled her pretty dyed hair and put him among her hairpins and sweethearts, dance slippers, torn paper roses. He was not less than these. He was not more. As the little Lincoln grew uglily upward and out, he began to understand that something was wrong. His little ways of trying to please his father, the bringing of matches, the jumping aside at warning sound of oh so large and rushing stride, the smile that gave and gave and gave, unsuccessful. Even Christmases and Easters were spoiled. He would be sitting at the family feasting table, really delighting in the displays of mashed potatoes and the rich golden fat crust of the ham or the festive fowl, when he would look up and find somebody feeling indignant about him. What a pity! What a pity! No love for one so loving. The little Lincoln loved everybody. Ants, changing caterpillars, his much missing mother, his kindergarten teacher, whose concern for him was composed of 1 part sympathy and 2 parts repulsion. The others ran up with their little drawings. He ran up with his. She tried to be pleasant with him as with others, but it was difficult, for she was all pretty, all daintiness, all tiny vanilla with blue eyes and fluffy sun hair. One afternoon, she saw him in the hall looking bleak against the wall. It was strange because the bell had long since rung and no other child was in sight. Pity flooded her. She buttoned her gloves and suggested cheerfully that she walk him home. She started out bravely, holding him by the hand, but she had not walked far before she regretted it. But little monkey, must everyone look? And clutching her hand like that, literally pinching it. At 7, little Lincoln loved the brother and sister who moved next door. Handsome, well-dressed, charitable often to him. They enjoyed him because he was resourceful, made up games, told stories. But when their more acceptable friends came, they turned their handsome backs on him. He hated himself for his feeling of well-being when with them, despite everything. He spent much of his time looking at himself in the mirror. What could be done? But there was no shrinking his head. There was no binding his ears. "Don't touch me," cried the little fairy-like being in the playground. Her name was Nerissa. The many children were playing tag, but when he caught her, she recoiled, jerked free, and ran. It was like all the rainbow that ever was, going off forever, all the sparklings in the sunset west. One day, he was yet 7, a thing happened In the downtown movies with his mother, a white man in a seat beside him whispered loudly to a companion and pointed at the little link. There, that's the kind I've been wanting to show you. One of the best examples of the species. Not like those diluted Negroes you see so much of on the streets these days, but the real thing. Black, ugly, and odd. You can see the savagery, the blunt blankness. That is the real thing. His mother, her hair never looked so red around the dark brown velvet of her face, jumped up, shrieked, "Go there!" She did not finish. She yanked to his feet the little Lincoln who was sitting there staring in fascination at his assessor, at the author of his new idea. All the way home, he was happy. Of course, he had not liked the word ugly, but after all, should he not be used to that by now? What had struck him among words and meanings he could little understand was the phrase, the real thing. He didn't know why. No, he didn't know quite why, but he liked that. He liked that very much. When he was hurt too much, stared at too much, left alone, he thought about that. He told himself, after all, I'm the real thing. That comforted him. Thank you.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm here with Dorothy Maines Prince, who's just performed as Gwendolyn Brooks. Thank you for being here. We haven't seen you in several years, 15 years since your last performance as Phyllis Wheatley. It's good to have you back again.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
What do you hope the audience will remember about Gwendolyn Brooks?
Well, first of all, that she was an exceptional writer, extraordinary writer, poet, a woman who lived during difficult times, but really was adamant about writing. She was a gifted woman, started writing very young, but even when things perhaps were difficult for her to get things published, she continued, she persevered. And not only was she encouraged by her family, but she grew up as a woman who felt that it was part of her responsibility to encourage others. And so she worked with children, and she loved working with children, and she's left a lot for us to live up to.
Who were the Black Star Rangers? I'm not sure if I got that.
They were actually a gang of young men that she worked with. It was in the early 30s. No, early 40s. I think it was like 41. She didn't stay very long working with them. They were talented young men, but they were men in these gangs. And they came, and she worked with them for maybe I think she did about 6 months. And then she turned them over to another poet, a male poet. And but they influenced her. She recognized that they were talented men, but they didn't really want to write sonnets. That's what she said. They did not really understand it. They didn't want to write sonnets, but she actually encouraged them to use their talents, and so they did.
Mm-hmm. And she continued that tradition, as you were talking about, working with young people, young poets, and she would have, I remember a documentary I saw of her, and she had them surrounding her. She was sitting somewhere on the floor, the place was packed, but she was sharing her wisdom and mentoring them to be able to rise in their own careers.
Yeah, and in fact, she, in an interview that she did with one of the staff members at the Library of Congress and another poet, they were asking her questions about her time as the consultant there. And she was saying that, yeah, she always took time to invite children in. And in fact, she was saying just the other day, in this interview, she was saying that she had 30 young kids all around. They had come into her office and they were talking about everything, not just poetry. She was talking about, they were talking about their grandmothers, about hair, about beer, about school, and she loved that. So yeah, she was always very much involved, loved children, and in fact, her daughter said that she remembers that she went to a school and read her works, and there were about 400 kids there. And she waited, after she had finished reading and done her performance, she made a point of signing her autograph, giving it to every one of those 400 kids. She did not leave until she had done that. So she was very much involved, and she always loved children, and she wanted to encourage them.
I wonder if that had anything to do with the fact that James Weldon Johnson was, sort of left her in the dust, and she may have said, "I'm never going to do that."
You know, you're probably right, because she said that when she met him, it was very chilling, she said, for a 16-year-old girl, even though he was just, she said, yeah, she should have understood, because yes, he did receive a lot of letters, a lot of things from different people, but she said, yeah, so that was probably one of the things that she said, I'm not going to do that.
You also talked about her sort of style of writing. You talked about sonnets, but didn't she use lots of different
all kinds of forms? Oh, yes. She's a master of it. I love her ballads. But she did dramatic narratives, but the ballads and just jazz. Various forms, all of them. Freestyle, you name it, she used it. So that's one thing about her. I mean, if you haven't gotten into any of her works, people should, because it really, especially if you're a writer or you think you're a poet, you should pick up her works and you can see how she really worked with structure and form, all kinds.
Mm-hmm. I remember the first time I read We Real Cool. It was back in the 70s, okay. And it was in a book called, a collection of poetry called I Am the Darker Brother.
Okay, I've seen that.
And it just struck me, out of all of the poems in that book, that was one that really, really stood out.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because I understand that she really got kind of tired of reading that poem. This is what one of her proteges said to me, that she really had just didn't want to read it anymore, but she did. But the one thing that she wrote in her autobiography about that poem, she said that there was, after she had read it at some high school in D.C., that the young man wrote her saying how much that poem had influenced his decision to stay in school, that he had actually thought about dropping out. But after she came and she read that poem, he made a point of saying in his letter that he wanted her to know what it did for him and how he was planning to stay in school. And so that really, as she said, that really influenced her to know that it's power in the word.
Yes, yeah. And we never know what we say or write or influences another person, how those words fall on the ears of another.
So she made a point of writing him back and letting him know how much she appreciated the fact that he had written her. And she hoped that he would continue to think, yes, I'm not going to drop out, I'm going to continue.
In that line of sort of mentorship or young people, how much did Haki Madhubuti mean to her? I heard an interview with her, and she was talking about
She said in one interview that he was like a mentor to her, but also like a son. He was very close. Actually, when I went to Chicago this year, he was there. He's still there, and as a part of that Brooks Day celebration, he read one of her poems. I think it was Primer for Blacks is what he read. And he was very, very involved with her life. And in fact, I read that he was just one of the family members on the day that she died, December 3rd, 2000. He was there with her at the time. So he was really, as she said, He was a mentor, but he was almost like a son to her.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think the television audience heard the question and answer session, and you talked about Gwendolyn Brooks Day. Can you tell us about that?
Okay, they say that this was the 4th Gwendolyn Brooks Day. It's interesting that it took many years before they finally decided, okay, we're going to do this, but they did. And what they do each year on her birthday, June 7th, is they organize this event where they ask poets. Some of these are professional poets, some of them are just amateurs there, and also, like I said, is that they have children from different schools who come in. Their teachers probably have helped them to memorize the text or to understand it. They come in, these are the cutest little kids, and they came in, these small children, they probably were only like in the 3rd, 4th grade. They came in and they read some of her poems, and then there were some high school kids who did some other more difficult poems, and it was a whole day affair from 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the evening, and they read just a rich a rich volume of her works, not all of them, but some of them, and it was really good. So it's good to know that her works are still alive and vibrant, and people are still enjoying her works, and these young poets who were talking about her influence on their lives and their work and how they see poetry and how they see their works is wonderful. And she was, she was a wonderful person, because like that poem, We Real Cool, she read it in a certain way, but she said she enjoyed, like when she would go to schools, kids would read it. She said at one time she'd gone to a school and it was just boys doing that poem. Then she would go and they'd added the girls, and they would be saying that poem in a very rhythmical way around the room. And she liked that, even though she didn't read it that way. So she was happy that people were still understanding that poem, and it really had an impact on the young people.
And giving the poem new life.
Yes, yes.
As it was interpreted by others.
Yeah.
But they were reading it. That's important. Tell us about some of her family life a little bit more. Her parents provided a very, from what I read, a very sort of stable environment and an encouraging environment, both father and mother.
Yeah, I think that was very important in her development. And I think it also was very important in how she later on dealt with her family and her children. Her husband, Henry Blakely, he was a poet, and I actually have one of his collections of poems. I don't know, I think he might have only had one published. Before she died in 2000, I remember seeing an interview where she said that he was really more of a novelist, that he had written a novel that she was going to make sure that it got published before she died. I tried to see it was a title that she had put there, but I couldn't locate it. So I don't know if they really ever did. So that's a part of research that I'm going to continue to see if maybe I can find out more about that. But she said that her family was very important to her children. She was very much involved with her family and her children, and she remembered the holidays that she had as a child. Her parents really made those really special days, and she tried to do the same thing for her children.
I read also that she would usually get books as Christmas
gifts.
And that one time she went behind the
Christmas tree and sat. I think that was really not just one time. I think she almost did that almost every Christmas. That's the way I read it. That was something that was not like a routine. It was a part of the tradition. After the Christmas, the Christmas presents were open and people perhaps had Christmas dinner, then she would go and she would read her book. Yeah.
She was sort of the impression she was a sort of a shy person, and you mentioned that she spent a lot of time alone, and also that she was an outsider. I read that in some places. How did she find her voice? How do you think she?
That's a good question. I don't know if it was because her mother encouraged her, but at the age of 7, when she said her mother started realizing that she wanted to write and that she had that gift of putting words together. I don't know, maybe it was just something that she was born to do. And because of the encouragement and the support that she had in her family life, that allowed her to continue to pursue it. You know, if her parents, her mother and father were very much into the arts. Her mother was a pianist. Her father sang, and so they knew they wanted to cultivate that in their children. She said that her brother Raymond actually was an artist. She said he didn't pursue it as much as he should have, but I think they were people who were very much aware of the importance of trying to let your voice be heard, to understand what your gift is, and to try to develop it. And I think definitely her parents, her father and mother, saw that in her and said, do it, do it. And I think that's the wonderful thing about family. And I think that's one thing, I think she appreciated that, and she wanted to give that to her children too.
And we're so glad that they did encourage her. We don't have a lot of time left. Can you talk about sojourns?
Oh,
that's something that you did.
That is sojourns, seeking our mothers ourselves. I'm glad you brought that up, but as I said tonight, I've really retired from that. So it's no longer in existence. That started in 1995. And I've pursued another course of action in my life now. I've gone back to school. I've always, you know, before, even when I was performing, I had always thought, when I've been married now for almost 45 years, it will be 45 years in September, I had always told my husband that we should be counselors, and he would say, Dorothy, we're not going to be counselors, no. And I said, oh, come on, Walter, let's be a counselor. And he said, no. Well, I actually, after I retired from the Chautauqua, I actually went back to school to become a counselor.
Excellent. Just following your
Yes,
own
right,
path.
right.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. You've been watching Chautauqua, Masters of Their Craft. I'm Angela Rice Beamer. Good night.